Welcome to Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach with attorney Yoni Leveretts. I'm Sean O'Connor, and you know Yoni is the founder of Leverett's Law Firm, and he's recognized for his exceptional skill in family law, his compassionate manner, and his commitment to achieving favorable outcomes for his clients. In today's episode, we're talking about gray divorce in New York and the financial, practical, and long-term considerations that arise when couples separate later in life. Now, Yoni, welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What's gray divorce? And then I'm like, oh, wait, we're talking about gray hair. Is that true, what we're talking about?
That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about older people getting divorced. We're talking about people who are, I would say, 55 and greater getting divorced.
Got it. I haven't heard that expression, but now I know. So, and so let's talk, get into it. When divorce does occur later in life, what issues tend to take priority as the parties begin evaluating what the separation will mean, especially for their future stability? I imagine there's, retirement comes up and that sort of thing.
Retirement is the big one. How are people going to survive post-divorce when they've spent the past 25 years of their lives collectively saving to retire together, to be able to go ahead and live the rest of their lives from 65 or 67 or 70 all the way through to age 90 or 100 or 87 or whatever it may be? How do they intend to live? Do they have insurance policies? Do they have insurance policies that are paid up? Do they have cash value in their insurance policies? Did they save enough in their 401ks? Did they save enough in their IRAs? What have they done to prepare for this? Or are they completely broke and basically just dividing a house and going their separate ways? It is extremely complicated, especially for women who came into the workforce later than their husbands, who are in a position to basically, they spent 10 years out, 12 years out, 15 years out having children, and they're only been in the workforce for 10 years. Their wages are significantly lower than their husbands. So you have to figure out alimony, which is another word for spousal maintenance or spousal support. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out if you can get a larger share of the marital estate as a result of your sacrifice. And you have to see what you can do, especially if you have kids in college still. I mean, because there are plenty of people who are in their 50s or pushing that range where they have children who are graduating from college or almost graduating from college.
Yeah, I'm thinking people in my family similarly, right? 50-something, their kids are in school for sure. In long-term marriages, how does that change the way the New York courts look at, say, property division, lifestyle and financial needs? Does the long-term marriage versus a shorter-term marriage come into play?
Shorter-term marriage is looked at very differently in terms of a gray-haired divorce because most of those are second marriages or third marriages. Therefore, people have money saved up from their first, second, or third marriage. If it's a long-term marriage, it's going to be looked at as a long-term venture. And then you have to look at earning capacity, years out of work for child raising, and all the other issues in terms of getting as much money as possible for your client, especially a woman who has lower earning capacity, and the wage gap, of course.
Right. You had mentioned the various, I'll say, asset classes or categories earlier, and I know it's complicated, but retirement assets can be significant in these cases. So what makes pensions, 401ks, or long-term investment accounts particularly important in a gray divorce? So there are some things you haven't touched on already?
Well, pensions are very rare. Most people do not have pensions nowadays. I mean, right. Teachers have pensions. Police officers have pensions. But for the most part, regular working people have 401ks and IRAs. People with pensions are better off trading their pension for giving away the house or doing other things. They're tradable assets. On the other hand, pensions are annuities. But they're annuities with a problem. If the person who has the annuity dies, then many times the whole entire pension goes away. So you got to be in a position where you're going to have insurance on that pension.
Got it.
You got to take those things into account.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, a scenario where, say, a woman took time out to raise kids, and in scenarios like that, where one spouse has been out of the workforce for many years, how does that factor into the discussions about long-term financial support?
Well, it's going to have to factor into the conversation because that person sacrificed their career for the family. They sacrificed their earning capacity for the family. They sacrificed annual raises for the family, annual bonuses for the family. They sacrificed those things based upon the mutual agreement of the parties. Therefore, they have to be compensated for it to the extent that it's going to allow them to save and put themselves in a financial position to go ahead and move forward with life.
Makes me think about, access to healthcare, which is an issue generally in our country. So healthcare access, insurance coverage, complicated after a long marriage ends, I'm sure. So what issues do people often need to think through when it comes to continuity of care or even future medical needs?
You've got to negotiate for money for health insurance. It is a must. You cannot overlook the issue. The lawyer has an obligation to go ahead and make sure you have a financial plan, which includes life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, retirement assets that are going to allow you to live and not fall by the wayside.
Let's talk assets. I mean, probably one of the biggest assets would be the marital home, right? It's, let's say in a long-term marriage, it's been owned for decades. What tends to influence whether one spouse keeps it or whether it needs to be sold, liquidated?
Well, one of the main influencing factors, whether it be sold or liquidated, is how much you get of the liquidated asset. Therefore, if you're going to sell it, do you get 70%, 60%, 50%? You need enough money to be able to invest that money in a safe way, which in today's world is not an easy thing to do. Okay, interest rates are not that high. They're 3-4%. On a regular, high yield savings account, maybe 4%. Okay, you've got to have enough money to compound your interest to be able to live and be able to take money out on a regular basis.
You mentioned kids in college earlier. I'm wondering how adult children might affect the process, especially when financial responsibilities or expectations overlap with the divorce issues. How do you handle that?
Personally, I avoid it like the plague. And basically, if the child is above the age of 21, I say we're not responsible for the child and the child is responsible for themselves. And if they have a 529 account, take it from there. They need student loans, take it from there. But it's too much of a burden for the marriage. So I avoid it like the plague.
So you will literally try to keep it sort of out of the conversation?
Completely.
Now, is there a scenario where like the opposing counsel might want to complicate that, or am I making that up? That's crazy talk.
No, there are many times opposing counsel wants to kind of drag these things in, especially moms. They don't want their daughters or their sons having, student loan debt when they're done. And then the emotion starts to drive things. And you have to rein them in to a certain extent and say, listen, we can't be emotional here. Your son or daughter is going to have a student loan. We have to protect you financially going forward. And the only way to do that is to cut them out to a certain extent.
Now, I know you've got a lot of experience in these matters, and I know you can't share any identifying personal details, but is there a gray divorce that you've handled where the couple's long shared history shaped how the court evaluated their needs? What stood out about that experience?
The long-term relationship impacts the court tremendously in all the cases because the courts need the history in order to evaluate what was done and why it was done. For example, if the husband sent 5 text messages every single year saying, honey, we're not making it financially, please go get a job. Okay, that's going to impact the court because that means the wife went ahead and made a decision, which was unilateral in nature, saying, listen, I'm going to forego my earnings because I want to be home with my kids.
From a practical point of view, I guess, some individuals that might be tuned into this episode, right, preparing for a later life divorce, what key financial questions should they evaluate early to get a clearer sense of how the separation may affect their long-term stability? What's a playbook that you offer?
There's no one particular playbook. You have to look at the facts of the case. But what I tell clients to do in terms of gray-hair divorces is I tell them to look at their assets, assume they're divided 50-50. If they're divided 50-50, will you have enough time to go ahead between the age of 55 and let's say 65 or 67 to make back enough money to be able to retire? And looking at the converse side, will your wife or your spouse have enough ability to go ahead and retire at 67? Maybe they're 5 years younger. Maybe they're 10 years younger. Maybe they have 10 more years in the workforce. Maybe they've got advanced degrees that they're not using enough or utilizing enough. So you've got to look at the facts of the case in order to evaluate it.
Makes sense, yeah. Age difference, education difference. I like it. Well, Yoni, we're about out of time. I know there's lots more to cover, and we'll catch up in a future episode. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for joining us on another episode of Law and Life, the Leverett's Approach. I'm Sean O'Connor, and if you want to contact Yanni or learn more, visit leverettslaw.com for more insights on navigating divorce and family law in New York. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review. That can be real helpful for people looking for this kind of information. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.